Hello everyone, welcome to my video, or should I say our video, because I have a special guest with me. But anyway, so it's about evolution. And my special guest.
Hello, my name is Craig. I'm the special guest.
hmm And so today we're going to be talking about a few things. It's going to be great about evolution, chapter 15 for biology, or marine biology, I guess you could say. So basically, the first thing I'm going to talk about is natural selection. So natural selection occurs in an environment to organisms that have like the best possible trait that increases their fitness being their ability to reproduce. So there's kind of a few things that go into it. So it's like you have the best possible chance that a species will blend in, as you can see with the mice example. The bird it doesn't see the dark mice that blend into their dark background as well as the tan mice, which stand out. But so the dark mice tend to reproduce longer or reproduce more, and they have the characteristics, so they'll pass that down. They'll be more likely to pass that down, and rather than the tan mice, which are more likely to die in their environment, and so that decreases their fitness or ability to reproduce. And so that's the basic premise of how it works. And as you can see, the giraffes as well, the ones that are taller are more likely to survive, um, and stuff like that. And I think that the tree would be an example of coevolution. Not, no, I don't think so. But anyway, so the what else? So there are a few other things that come into natural selection where it is the with the fitness, because some species they tend to like go for more like flamboyant mates. That's how they attract mates. So those with flamboyant colors, coloration, and stuff like that. So they are more likely to attract a mate, but also more likely to die. So it's kind of a 50-50, and it tends to balance each other out from my observations. So yeah, that is basically natural selection. The second thing I described was sexual selection, is what I meant to say. Some other selection types are stabilizing selection and disruptive selection, which I'll pull up a picture here. So these are some other selection types. So we have directional selection, stabilizing selection, and disruptive selection. So they're very easy to interpret with a graph, much easier than without. So let's start with the directional selection. So it's like for the one extreme trait, as it says on, and against the other extreme trait. So it basically. So actually, I'm gonna have my special guest explain that because it does it better than me. So go ahead.
So directional selection is where a population goes towards one extreme and away from the other. Stabilizing selection is when a population goes away from either extreme and towards the middle. And disruptive selection is where a population splits and goes towards both extremes. It has So an example of directional selection would be a whole population growing longer tails because they're beneficial. An example of stabilizing selection would a whole population having medium-sized tails because that's the most helpful for them. And disruptive selection would be some of the population having really short tails and some of the population having really long tails.
Yeah, and I think this is an example of how it's balancing out the sexual selection because, for example, with the disruptive selection, some skunks or whatever that thing is, I don't know, has a squirrel has like a very small tail, which allows them to like do something better in their environment, but then the long tail might attract mates more, so they both are able to survive in their respective uh, ways. All right, we're back in business, and homologous structures or homologous, whatever you want to call it. So those structures are similar to structures in organisms with shared ancestry, and they are derived from the same common ancestor, but might not have the same function. So one example is the pendactyl limbs, where it's like they like look, they're in the cat, in the human, and my god, there's a bug on me.
Homologous structures are structures that don't have the same function but have the same anatomical shape.
And they're only shared because of their shared ancestry.
Now we have
So now we have the vestigial structures, and those are ones that have like been derived in different species or derived. I don't know. They're in They're in the different species because of the environment they live in. So, like, if they live in water, they need the certain fin, wing, or flipper to be able to move around the best they can.
Vestigial structures are structures that have the same shape on the outside and have the same purpose, but do not have the same anatomical shape. They are the opposite of homologous structures.
Yep. Anyway, on to camouflage. Camouflage is a fantastic thing. It's like when an organism has been adapted to blend into its environment. So mimicry is the next thing, and it's one like in. Okay, so I have the actual image for mimicry because that was camouflage. Silly me. So mimicry is one like there's like one animal and it's like ooh scary evil, and then the other one is like I need to be like you so that predators won't try and eat me. And that's pretty much the basic premise of it. It's pretty simple. As you can see, this one butterfly dude is like, I want to be like you because probably like deadly and stuff. So that's basically mimicry.
Alright, guys, now we will be going over the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So, this equation that you see on the screen is used for population uh, percentages, right? So, percentages of alleles. But for this to occur, there have to be there are five things have to be true. So the first thing that has to be true is that there is no mutations within the population. The next thing that has to be true is that there's no gene flow in the population. The third thing that must be true is that the population size must be very large. The fourth condition is that there must be random mating within the population. And the fifth condition is that natural selection must not occur. So, from these conditions, you can see that this could never actually happen in nature. This is a purely mathematical and hypothetical thing.
So it shows basically how to calculate things because it's on a simpler scale and like a very clear cut scale without all the individual variables that could affect the outcome. So it just makes it easier to uh, be able to calculate mathematically.
So, while the equation in front of you on the screen may look intimidating, you should not be intimidated by it. So, there are two variables in this equation, p and q. So P is the frequency of the dominant genotype, and P is the dominant genotype, Q is the recessive genotype. So P squared is the frequency of the homozygous dominant genotype, 2PQ is the frequency of the heterozygous genotype, and Q squared is the frequency of the homozygous recessive genotype. And so when you add all those up, you will get 1.
So also to say if you don't know, the homozygous is when there's two of the same. So the homozygous dominant would have two dominant alleles. So that's just example. And heterozygous is two different. So it would have a dominant and a recessive allele.
So an example of a problem that you might get is that the P frequency. So when given the Hardy-Weinberg equation, things you'll be asked to do is calculate the frequency of the homozygous or the homozygous dominant or recessive, or the heterozygous. And what you'll do is um you'll be given one of the numbers, and it's just algebra really to calculate it. So it's not that hard. And now we will move on to effects within populations. So genetic drift is an effect that you will see when alleles in a population change. They can change for a number of reasons, and there are two main reasons that we will go over next that are why genetic drift occurs. So the first way that this can occur is the founder effect. This is when an example of this is one species going from one island to another island, and so on the new island, the percentage of alleles has changed because it was started out by only a few members of the species.
It's also random, so just keep that in mind. And so what it means if it's random is that like any like type genes or whatever can be like become dominant.
So the bottleneck effect you can think of as a group of a population being forced to a bottleneck, so only some can escape. And the effect of this is that the population percentages will change based on the surviving percentage.
And it's random. Thank you.